Let's go ahead and start, though, with trying to separate what we believe are, concrete developments, what is interesting for the conversation, what is funny, what is sad with the latest in the Michigan sign stealing scandal. So before we get to vacuums, before we get to Airbnb-ing your house and sleeping in your car, again, some of this funny, some of this sad. Here's sort of as I've distilled it. Michigan notified by the Big Ten of potential punishment. Michigan argues in a letter to the Big Ten that the Big Ten should wait for the NCAA to finish its investigation before handing down punishment. The Big Ten would be potentially handing down any kind of punishment under the league's sportsmanship policy, which includes any kind of disruption to the integrity of the game. Michigan reportedly has informed the Big Ten and the NCAA they do it too, as Ohio State and Rutgers and Purdue reportedly shared the Wolverines' signals in 2022. According to ESPN's Pete Thamel with the report here on Wednesday morning, that this is the deadline day for Michigan to offer its official response to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is expected to, quote, absorb the information with no suspensions or penalties coming at this point. So, Danny, let's start with the in the here, in the now. How do you see the next couple of days and the rest of this week playing out for Michigan?
I think for the team and Jim Harbaugh, it's business as usual. I think they're going to try to galvanize each other. But from the university standpoint, it's probably a bunch of saber rattling. Like, hey, you want to come at us? We're ready. Like, we're ready for a legal battle if you try to do something as unprecedented as suspending our coach, imparting a discipline on us when we haven't been proven to have done anything wrong. So I think it'll be a bunch of, sources tell whatever reporter it is that they're ready to go to battle. Sources tell whoever. The Big Ten is taking this very seriously. But ultimately, I don't think we're going to get any real action or any news that's like really newsworthy. So I think it's going to be a bunch of saber rattling, just back and forth.
What do you say, Tom?
Danny said we aren't going to get anything new or newsworthy, and I said we haven't for a week. I don't know. There's going to be some kind of punishment. The punishment, whatever it is, I'll reserve judgment on it for when it's announced, but it shouldn't be anything like that'll have any kind of impact, because it all boils down to Michigan broke a rule. Michigan should be punished for breaking the rule, even though the rule is arcane and only exists because the other schools couldn't afford it, and bureaucratic inertia has kept them from getting rid of it, and they'll likely get rid of it now that this has become such a big deal. But the punishment shouldn't be severe, because as we've talked about on this show from the very first moment this story broke, everybody does it. And now everybody's skeletons are being dragged out of the closet about how everybody steals signs. And the method Michigan used was against the rules. The methods other schools have used, they're not against the rules. The result is the same. The other team's signals. There is not a huge advantage to getting it through video. That's what is so stupid about the entire thing. It is the most inefficient way to do it, having this vast network of spies recording all this stuff, when you could just pick up the phone and call your friend who played them last week, and they'll tell you the same damn thing that you're getting from that video. So there is no huge competitive advantage. So whatever the punishment is in the end should not be significant. It should be a fine and a slap on the wrist, and everybody moves on. But we've blown this thing up to such large proportions that unless Jim Harbaugh goes to prison, everybody's going to feel like Michigan got away with something. And it's just so freaking stupid. And by the way, Chip, you'll appreciate this. I told Lynn the other day, I said, set a reminder in your phone for Halloween next year to ask me what the dumb, pointless scandal in college football was this month. Because what month did this break, Chip?
October.
What happens in October every year?
Halloween.
With the college football media economy. What happens in October every year?
Oh, numbers go down. That's right.
The Colorado bubble burst, and then October came, and all of a sudden this became a huge deal. If this was Arkansas State or something, we'd crack some jokes about Butch Jones like hiding in garbage cans for 20 minutes, and we would all move on. But since it's Michigan and they are a great team and they are in the college football playoff conversation, and other coaches have plenty of reason to want them to be punished for it, it becomes this never-ending cycle of huge, wild, crazy twists.
I just set the calendar too.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you. I disagree with you in the aspect of I do think there's a competitive advantage versus on the field, game day, you've got several guys trying to decipher something very quickly versus sending somebody there, filming, having a week to interpret, to dissect it, to try to use it on game day. How much of an advantage? I think it's debatable, but I do think it's a competitive advantage, which is why we're here. And I think the reason we're talking about it so much is because it's Michigan. They're potentially the best team in the entire country. So, of course, we're going to talk about it. I don't think it's just – I know I get the conspiracy theory like we need something to talk about. I think it's worthy of the investigation. Like, I think the NCAA, when have they ever acted fast? All of a sudden, they have got their butts in gear. I don't have confidence they get it done in time, but they've always been like, we'll get there when we get to it. They are in a hurry on this one.
Saying that this story is being overblown is not a conspiracy theory. The idea that this is some large network in which Jim Harbaugh is the head of a vast network of spies is the conspiracy theory that everybody is pushing. If you read the Wall Street Journal story on Connor Stalions, it paints a concerning picture. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Not dealing with a rational actor.
Yeah.
That is my that's my unfair assumption, having not met the guy, that every detail that we get paints a not reliable narrator.
So you go with the insanity defense.
Basically, yes. Your legal defense to a nuisance claim where you have all these vacuums on your porch and your HOA is pissed at you. If your legal defense is I coach for Michigan and the guy bringing the claim is a Michigan State fan and he must hate me because he hates Michigan, like it's very clear that Connor Stalions, not about his entire life, but a large part of his life centered around Michigan football. He's like absolutely message board guy come to life. I think what we saw yesterday or last night was at I think it was Richard Johnson, Sports Illustrated, the story about how all of these coaches colluded to give Purdue Michigan signs for the Big Ten championship game. I think Michigan is at a competitive disadvantage if it does not try to cheat and steal signs. I operate under the assumption that all of these big level programs are cheating in some way. Now, I do think Michigan probably should be punished a little bit because what they did was explicitly outlawed, right? And also they were really dumb about it. And they probably should be punished a little bit. Like I said, maybe suspend a coordinator for a game or something like that. If you're Tony Petitti, and I need to give credit to Peter Burns on this because it's essentially taking what municipal governments do where they're getting sued. They definitely screwed up. They should settle the case, but that looks bad on them because they're elected officials on a board. So they take it to a trial. And then when they lose, they blame the jury system. Basically what should happen, and Peter Burns kind of outlined this, what Petitti should probably do is try to hammer Michigan. Michigan gets an injunction. They sue back like, yeah, this is never going to fly. Petitti's like, hey, I did what I'm allowed to do. Sorry, other 13 schools and coaches, knowing that nothing's going to happen. The networks remain happy. Michigan remains happy. The schools are like, all right, we did all we could. Cool. We're not really going to talk about this anymore because, again, glass houses, hello. And we go on with our life. Michigan plays. I don't know. Same energy. We all think this sport is a lot dirtier than what gets reported. A lot. I just don't care anymore. It was good traffic for 2 weeks.
The vacuums, repairing vacuums and sending them back. I mean, that's wild, right?
That is not a 5-star review on your Amazon page.
And so it's like somebody bought a camera that they thought was going to be new and the camera had smudges on the lenses.
That could have just been handling.
Question though. I mean, what are we thinking?
Will they vacuum some lens?
Time and money. Yeah. Like, are you really thinking you're going to make money doing that? Or
I don't know, man.
I don't know. Like, how much did some of these vacuums sell for? Do we know how much the ones sold for that didn't get returned and weren't complained about?
I don't know.
I don't know. Kind of weird.
Anyway.
Have you guys? So I know the defense, but I mean, have you guys looked at any of the resumes of any of these coaches that have elevated, their way through the ranks, like where they started out? I mean, there's a lot of coaches that started on the bottom, sleeping on the floor of somebody's buddy's, other assistant coach's house. Like, I kind of appreciate the hustle. Like we've seen, I mean, Manny Diaz was at Florida State with me. I'm not saying he's anywhere near the same, but he was a guy who was a video coordinator at Florida State. Like that's a guy, didn't play, wasn't a great, just didn't have a name, but he hustled, because we do appreciate the hustle. I think that could be it too. He was a guy who just wanted to be a head coach. I mean, some of these guys on these staffs that are low level, they work insane hours with no pay whatsoever. And if you can do something to put yourself, to elevate yourself, to make you stand out, then why wouldn't you?
I think that man, this is so unfair, but my read on it is that he romanticized that, Danny. He had heard those stories and he was like, this is what I've got to do. When you have a 600-page manifesto of your plans for the future of Michigan football, and you believe that you are going to lead a revolution in the sport with your great expertise, he is fulfilling the main character syndrome. He is writing his origin story. Like he really believes that this is how it's going to get done, and legend will remember Connor Stalions and what he meant to Michigan football. Like that, again, very unfair read of it, but the way that all the details, the way that I process it, that's what I see here from Connor.
So you're saying he wouldn't do the Manny Diaz thing, where Manny Diaz at Florida State eventually took the Miami head coaching job. He's never going to disavow Michigan like that. He wasn't on the fast track to get any job. He wanted Michigan job.
They Spencer Hall made a joke on Bomani Jones' podcast that if he gets called into court, he needs to show up with a Michigan neck tat, just a big old M on the side of it.
I have a similar question to what Dan Wetzel asked. And he basically asked, okay, what is the difference between Michigan sending somebody to get signs in person and Purdue taking signs that were gathered in person by other Big Ten schools and then using them? Is it the method of acquisition? Because the method, like how do you acquire the signs that were acquired by in-person scouting? Like Michigan sends somebody out there to do in-person scouting. Purdue knows they're going to get the signals, which were acquired via in-person scouting from these other schools. Mm-hmm. Again, this is Michigan's mitigation, and it's brilliant.
One is much more efficient than the other, and it's the one that's not the Michigan way. It is just that calling your friends, hey, what do you got from their signals? You played them on Saturday. What did you see? And
we talked about this on October 26th. Go back and listen to the episode. I talked to a coach, and he's like, yeah, I spent like 2 hours on the phone with this other school last night. They gave me everything. Like, we feel great about our game plan now because they just played the thing. Like, it was two very friendly staffs playing the same team back to back, and the second team crushed their ass. So,
I do think it's the method, though, specifically, which is there's very specific ruling in it.
Yeah, they broke the rule. But at the end,
Florida State, why do you think I was friendly with KDs or DGs? Because their sorority had a cabinet full of former exams that you could go grab before you took the exam. That's the equivalent of sharing notes for different classes, as opposed to if you're in there like Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, was it in Spies Like Us when they had the video and they were doing everything trying to look at everybody else? It's way more obvious when you do that.
It boils down to this. They broke the rule. They should be punished, but the punishment should fit the crime. And the crime is a very, very tiny little misdemeanor that is being blown into like a class 5 felony that he should go to federal prison for. It is just a very tiny violation that everybody thinks is now the last string holding civilization together that they didn't know existed 3 weeks ago. That's really what this is.
The fine and the sportsmanship clause is what, 2-game suspension and $10,000
at most, unless you get the president's.
So do you think there was a report, I forget who had it, that was floated to Santa Ono and Michigan, and they were like, oh, we're going to court. Why wouldn't you just pay the fine? And if you can negotiate it, say we already did time served.
It's the 2-game suspension.
Say we already did it.
Was for the other thing, though.
That was for the other
thing. We did it already. We
sat out cheeseburgers. Yeah, that was for having people on campus when they weren't supposed to have them on campus.
Yeah, this is a bigger deal because he also spent the season on the sideline at the beginning of the year. Like this, it's just. Anyway, I planned for 7 minutes Here we are, 16 minutes into the podcast. You can't help it. That's why, Tom, because you start talking about it and then you just can't stop talking about it.